Showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
All right, let's welcome everybody out today to episode 312 of I Am Salt Lake podcast. My name's Chris Hollifield.
And I'm Chrissy Hollifield.
This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Five Wives Vodka and Amanda K. Memories, but we're going to tell you more about them later. Today on the podcast, we got the opportunity to sit down and chat with Richard Markosian. He is the founder and editor of local magazine Utah Stories. You guys have seen these magazines all over Utah. I know it. Now you get to hear the story on how it started. I actually didn't even really realize that it went back as far as it did.
Yeah, and his story is so great because it's the epitome of make the change you want to see in the world.
Exactly. And like I said, we're going to get into that here in just a second. If you haven't taken a moment to sign up for our email list so we can stay in touch with you that way, please take a moment, head on over to our website, iamsaltlake.com, scroll down. I believe it's about halfway down on the right-hand side. That's where you can put your email address and all that good information. We're going to start doing some giveaways here shortly. So you're going to want to make sure that you're signed up on the email list.
Because that's the only way we'll notify you.
All right. With all that being said, let's jump into that conversation that we had with Richard Markosian as he came over to our office and shared his story. Thank you for listening. Enjoy. Let's pretend you and I just met, say the bar, and you had 30 seconds to tell me about yourself. How would you, what would you say?
I'd say I'm a liberty-minded person who started a magazine out of a couple years out of journalism school. I kind of think of myself much more as a journalist than a publisher. I kind of begrudgingly became a publisher because
you created an avenue for your journalism.
Yeah, because I wanted to do the kind of journalism I felt was lacking in Salt Lake, and it was basically journalism promoting the ideals of liberty, entrepreneurship, and a free market for people to go out and create their own wealth in the local community.
Did you grow up here in Utah, or where is home for you?
Yeah, I grew up in East Mill Creek.
So you've always been in this area.
Yeah, my whole life.
Did you ever move away at all?
Yeah, I moved away for a year off and on to the UK.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's quite a move.
What took you out to the UK?
My wife got a postdoc at Cambridge University, and she went to Cambridge to do a postdoc there.
Oh, wow. How is it over there? I've never been.
It's incredibly beautiful. It's like rolling hills and charming little villages, and every little village has a pub, and you go there and you meet these characters and very quaint and pretty, especially in Cambridgeshire where we were at. It was amazingly idyllic where we were at. And
could you ever see yourself living there full time?
It's because I am very liberty-minded and very entrepreneurial. And I saw such a sort of absence of that there. I was like, man, this is beautiful and gorgeous, but I miss my mountains and I miss my freedom. And I come from, half my family's Mormon, and half of them really came from England to settle in the Great Basin Kingdom. And so I'm kind of like, all right, I've always had in the back of my mind, why did my ancestors come over here?
Yeah.
Like, what was it about the desert that attracted them to actually want to come and settle here?
Because it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful, but it's kind of like more beautiful in England. But you don't have the opportunity to own, to have ownership over your life like you do here. You can't really just go out and start a business on a shoestring. There's so much regulation, and there's so much, there's so many entities that already own the economy over there that it didn't feel like that something like Utah Stories would be possible in the UK. So
you mentioned you went to school for journalism, right?
Yeah.
Was that your first choice, or I mean, what got you into journalism?
No,
Were you always a
wasn't.
writer, or what?
So I started out in filmmaking.
Really?
And I started studying documentary filmmaking, and then I got a job at the Chronicle as a staff writer the Daily Utah Chronicle of the University of Utah. And I was like, man, I really like the quick format of journalism, just being able to write a story, present it, and get it out much more quickly than a documentary film, which would require like
a lot of time.
Like
months.
dedication for a while.
Yeah, you'd have to research a film. You'd have to figure out your treatment and your subjects. Whereas an article, you can really quickly delve in and create your story arc much more quickly and concisely. And I found that I really enjoyed writing and I really enjoy research. I like getting to know people and describing their niche and their character and how it is they function in life and how they've designed their own lifestyle. And so I kind of found, Utah Stories started out as a film website. It was basically just short films.
Really?
Yeah.
Like reviews of them or write-ups or the actual films?
Yeah, just short little videos on subjects I found interesting.
Like mini documentaries?
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Like little YouTube clips, more or less. Really?
Yeah.
Are they still available?
I want to say...
Can you find them on Utah
gosh,
Stories?
So
digging the deep.
You got to go way back, like 2007,
straight up archive.
But we basically I started creating these short little films, and I made one on the Sugar House Granite Block about how they were tearing down the historic buildings, and then I made one about the teardown of the Crossroads Mall and the ZCMI Center. Why were we tearing down these buildings that were only 35 years old, and why is our architecture so unsustainable for longer than that, for such a short period of time? So I interviewed all the longtime local business owners on the street, and they had so much insight, and it was such a fun story to work on for like a month and a half. I turned it into a couple short documentary films, and it got like attention from a couple of professors up at the U, and actually City Weekly recognized it as being a really cool little film. And
you named it Utah Stories. Is that when the name, or did you change that later?
Yeah, I basically just was trying to figure out what URL I could buy.
Sure.
That's how I picked
That's
names.
how Chrissy is.
That
She
is
owns about,
always
how many, 50 of them now? 50 URLs?
Around there.
She comes up with a name and then buys it. You know?
Well, if someone says something cool, I'm like, is that available? And then you never know. You never know.
No, that's great.
So you bought Utah Stories.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, I'll just put my little films on here and see if people like them. See if there's and I had to do this all part-time because I paid my way through school as a web developer, a programmer. And so I basically thought, I'll do this on the side because I really enjoy it. But I didn't know how I was going to earn any money doing it.
To monetize it, yeah.
I didn't know how to monetize.
And so at what point did it turn into, so it went from the website, and then at what point did you actually turn it into a physical magazine then?
It took a couple years. It was like, do you remember K-Jazz? I think it's got bought out, but K-Jazz TV.
The Channel 14, wasn't it?
Channel 14.
Yeah.
They started a morning program, and they invited me to come on once a week and show one of my videos.
Really?
That is really cool.
Did they just reached out to you, found you, or did you?
I think they had job openings for this morning program, and I sort of applied, and then I came up with I like pitched the idea to them. I said, I got this website. I really like this content to get out there. Could I show a video? And they said originally, yeah, once a month. Mm-hmm. And then after I showed just one, they said, well, why don't you come back just a week later? And then I had to really scramble because I was spending about a month at a time on
so you were still creating those while you were showing them on K-Jazz?
Yeah. So
wow.
I found kind of a way to produce them really quickly so I could do it once a week, but it would take me like 20, 30 hours to produce one, 5-minute video because I really wanted to go in depth. I wanted that to be the big difference. Mm-hmm. Like really delve into like.
And you were doing these by yourself, right?
Yeah. I eventually got a couple of like part-time producers to help me, but that went on for only like, I'd say about 8 or 9 months. And they paid me next to nothing. I mean, it was more like I just wanted to do it to get name recognition out there.
The exposure.
And so then that show, the show was terrible. It was like, I mean, there was some nice people on it, but they did hardly invested any money on it. They'd try to show the traffic on a chalkboard. It was
Really?
just so super
Like the
amateur.
actual real traffic, like
Yeah,
daily.
they say,
the
oh
morning
yeah,
show was
here's like some cars we're gonna draw with yellow chalk.
No way.
And there's some traffic in here, and let's just draw some traffic.
That's
was like-
amazing. I would watch
was
that.
it just a low budget or?
Super low budget.
Really?
Like you're
So
talking about the Larry
great.
H. Miller Empire, and they probably threw like on the whole set and all the design of everything, probably like 10 grand at it. And I was like, man, they're not even trying to
Yeah.
make a success out of it, unfortunately. And so, but it was a really cool experience to kind of see broadcasting from that angle. And
And you're like, I don't want to do this.
yeah, this is obviously not where I'm wanting to go. And I thought maybe I should reach out to KUTV or another news station to try to get the stories and make them. But then I thought, but I'm not making any money at all. And so there's got to be another way to do it. And I had so those the stages where it went from that to getting sponsors of the website. Like I just said, I just reached out to like squatters. I said, hey, would you sponsor our content? We're doing all this hyper local content. We'll do a story on you guys in the craft beer industry. And they said yes. And then a couple other businesses said yes. And we eventually ended up with like 10 sponsors of the website. And so I had some working capital to pay other writers and producers to help, kind of get a production flow going. And then we went from like 1,000 visitors a month to our website all the way up to like 14,000 visitors in the 6 months that we were really cranking out stories.
Wow.
So you're starting to get some hits and you're like, wait, there might be something to this.
Yeah. And then I went back to the sponsors and I just said, check this out. We've like 13 times the amount of traffic, and none of them really care. They're just like, yeah, what this little banner ad you're giving us, this just isn't worth the $200.
They want to see the return.
Yeah, they just didn't think the value was there in what they were paying. Like they were all paying $200 a month. And so a few of them renewed, but then I showed them this brochure, this little pamphlet I was using to promote the website, and they're like, we like this pamphlet. Like, why can't we run an ad on the pamphlet? We'll pay more for an ad.
Really?
Like a print ad.
Man.
Is it because it's tangible? Is that what it is? I mean,
I think so. And I think that was like 2008. And I think I kept hearing in journalism school, print is dead.
sure.
Don't go into print.
Right.
Like anything but. But what I learned from the marketplace was totally different. The value that potential advertisers placed on print was much greater than the value they placed on digital.
I find that to still be true.
Do you think though that that's everywhere or maybe just Salt Lake City? Because I mean, we have some good publications here in general.
It could be
and
a
they
little unique.
thrive. They all seem to kind of thrive, right? I don't know what the numbers are, but it's
Yeah.
kind of like I was telling a friend that I was going to be chatting with you. He lives out in DC, and he was like, "Wow, he still does print. That's amazing." Like, how's he making it? And it's like, I don't know, but he is. And I think it's like
Maybe it's
even your
niche
dad,
print.
he goes to have magazines
He
to
does.
advertise.
He's in charge of marketing for a big company, and they'll pay for $7,000 ads, one ad in one catalog or magazine, that might get 200 distributions. But people they put so much into it.
Yeah, I think you just see something in print and it doesn't require an operating system or a platform other than what it is. And so,
No cross-browser compatibility.
Yeah, it's not going to crash on you and freeze up. And,
Well, plus even back then, a lot of people probably still didn't even know how to use the internet.
yeah, it's like 2009. It was really before YouTube got really popular. It's before Facebook was popular. MySpace was more popular than Facebook, and it was, yeah, and then basically we were just trying to feel our way through on how do we get this kind of content out there, and that was right when the Great Recession hit, 2009, and we printed our first issue in June, and the whole challenge was like, how do we keep advertisers? How do we keep them from just dropping out? And so we decided we'll go to the farmer's market and just pass out copies. and my cousin who just got back from I'm not a Mormon, but half my family's Mormon. He just got back from his Mormon mission. I was like, apply your Mormon missionary skills to getting this magazine.
Good skills, man.
Yeah. And he helped me get out like 7,000 copies per farmer's market. Like,
just on like the Saturday downtown one, the one at Pioneer Park there. Wow.
We'd give it to everybody. Like he'd be on one corner, I'd be on another corner. Everybody going to the farmer's market would have a copy.
So were some of the first few issues, I guess would be of Utah Stories, were they as thick as they are now, or were they quite a bit thinner?
We started out 24 pages, and we started out with 5,000 copies. And then it was only like 3 months later, we got up to 48 pages and 10,000 copies. And then now our biggest issue we've ever done is 27,000 copies and 96 pages.
Wow. How do you know? So you don't run the same amount every month then, I guess, on it?
We run usually 25,000 copies in the winter, and then we run all throughout the summer. The farmer's market, we still pass out at the farmer's markets.
That's awesome.
A whole nother 1,000 copies just for farmer's market customers. And we love going to farmer's markets. And I found that was a really cool way to talk to readers and get their input. And I'd see the same people. I'd say, hey, did you read that article I suggested to you? And they come back and say, yeah, I found a bunch of typos. You guys really got to work on what,
That's so cool that you actually get out there and you get to know your readers on a personal level and get feedback from them. Not a lot of people do that.
Yeah, it was really fun. And we just decided we were going to be there every single week, the market with our booth. And that's how we were going to promote our magazine and during the Great Recession.
Oh, so you had a booth. You weren't just like standing on the corner.
Kind of. Like they didn't, at the time, Kim Angeli, she was extremely generous and helpful. She gave us a little spot to just like, it wasn't a booth size. It was like half the booth.
I got you.
And then I'd just sit there and talk to people and pass out. And then people started collecting them. Like, we'd have all of the prior month's issues on our table, and people were like, oh, I got that one and that one, but I don't have this one. And
how did that make you feel?
It was
people
awesome.
Were collecting them.
And
awesome.
Especially going from being a programmer where I'd been in front of the computer screen literally like my whole career, like for the 12 years before that, I was a computer graphic designer before I was a programmer. And it's just like to get in front of people and talk about the stories and talk about the issues that were interesting and pressing to the local community. I thought that was such a cool way to just get direct access to the public and story ideas from them and input from them.
Yeah. Was that a challenging transition, going from really working with computers to actually interacting with people a lot?
Yeah, it was. It was like, I'm still pretty much an introvert. Like I don't consider myself an extrovert. I really kind of need quiet time, alone time, and I like to work quietly. Mm-hmm. But to go from mostly spending my time quietly working on my computer to mostly spending my time talking to whether it's advertisers or people we're writing stories about, it was a big shift in my life. Yeah. And it was, but it was great. I mean, I absolutely loved it. And I felt super fortunate to be able to do the kind of journalism I wanted to do, because the challenge getting out of journalism school was, if it bleeds, it leads. Do a story in one single day. It has to be, fill up a certain number of columns. The copy has to be there, ready to print. And really, you weren't allowed anymore from, as a new writer to a newspaper, to do in-depth stories. You just had to produce lots of copies and stories that you could do quickly. Wow. And that didn't sound appealing to me. So
you were actually writing as well as putting the magazine together. How many writers did you have back then? Just a couple?
We had about 4.
About 4. And how many do you have now?
We've got a pool of about 15.
Okay.
And about 3 or 4 photographers.
Are they just like freelance writers? Is that kind of what you're working off of with Utah Stories?
Yeah, one kind of staff writer who's also my assistant, and the rest are freelance.
Do you have is there an actual office here actually now it's down by Bud's, isn't it? Bud's Sandwich Shop.
We were there for 8 years.
Yeah.
And we just moved about a year ago to Holladay.
Oh, okay.
And yeah,
What made you move there? What?
My ceiling was caving in. My landlord didn't really want to fix it. So
that's kind of a problem.
Yeah. It's like, dude, my ceiling's going to cave in and like smash my head in and I'm going to die.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to fix
but it took you from downtown to Holladay though. So you were kind of out of the action.
And it was tough at first moving to the Holladay suburbs and getting out of downtown. But our house is in Sugar House and I go down to downtown regularly still.
Okay.
And so I still feel like
dude, everything is so close in this
it really
city
is.
and state.
We kind of complain, but everything here is a lot closer than in other states. It's just right down the freeway.
We have a Facebook group, an I Am Salt Lake community Facebook group, which if you're not part of it, you need to be part of it. Anyway, we had a couple of people that I said, hey, we're going to be talking to Richard Markosian from Utah Stories. Anybody have any questions? A listener of the show, Brittany Hemingway, she asked, what kind of things, stories, ads, themes, do you wish you could do but probably couldn't get away with?
Oh, that's a great question.
or maybe even need to think about that one and come back.
This is your time to open up right now.
Yeah, like what would you do articles about, but you just know you couldn't get away with it?
Well, get away with it in terms of not being legal, or get away with in terms of it just being too challenging because we don't have the resources.
That's a very good distinction. There are probably some really good stories that you could cover, but people might get in trouble.
Issues might, I'm going to assume she means the latter of the two, that just the limited resources and budget. So if we had an unlimited budget, I would love to conduct a complete audit of every municipality along the Wasatch Front to see how our tax dollars are exactly being spent. So for example, Salt Lake City Corporation, where we all pay our water bill, I've watched my water bill increase by double over 10 years. Has the cost of water increased by double?
Probably not.
Has the maintenance of our water lines increased by double? And the justification I've heard is that other cities charge this much for water, so we should be charging this much too. And my hunch is there's probably some people at the very top getting amazing salaries who are just, sitting in cubicles.
They're just kind of constantly raising it up.
Yeah, they just increasing
our
costs.
Nickel and dime it adds up, man.
Yeah, for all sorts of city services, we're seeing our recycling and waste services go really high, and we're getting a separate bill for our police services because they're not including it all in our property taxes. Yeah, we got some bill. And in Holladay, they charge you now for your EMT and police services separate.
You better make good on that. Just run to different houses and call 911. Be like, I'm paying for this.
Could you imagine that though? Like you call the fire department and they look at it. Well, you didn't pay your bill this month, so we're not going to come and put your house out.
That would be awful. Oh my gosh.
Let's take a quick break really fast here. Hang tight, Chrissy. We need to take a quick break to play a message from our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. We have some more questions for Richard, so hang tight. This episode of I Am Salt Lake Podcast is proudly sponsored by Five Wives Vodka. When you're in Texas, you drink Tito's. When you're in Utah, you drink Five Wives. So the next time you're at your local bar or state liquor store, make sure to ask for Five Wives Vodka. I've been drinking Five Wives for years and years now. So now that we have the opportunity to bring them on as a sponsor of this podcast is like a dream come true for me. So make sure to support them. Tell them thank you for sponsoring I Am Salt Lake Podcast. And for the month of January, you can actually get $3 off a 750 milliliter bottle of Five Wives at any Utah State liquor store. Head on over to their website, fivewivesvodka.com, where you can get drink recipes and find out all about all of their flavors. This episode of the podcast is also sponsored by our friend, Amanda DeWolf. Do you have an event coming up that you need a photographer? Are you a local business and need pictures for your products? Are you a local Salt Lake City stand-up comedian and you need headshots? We want to invite you to check out the work of local Salt Lake City photographer Amanda DeWolf. You could check out her work. You can get in touch with her. You can order prints directly on her website, amandakmemories.com. Again, the website is amandakay.com. nbsp-memories.com. Did you have a question you want to start off with?
Well, I was just going to ask, so is that the dream story that you would want to cover of all stories?
No, I think that what I did, we did a whole issue on Orrin Hatch, and he's now, retiring, and Mitt Romney's very likely going to take his seat. That was a story where if I had a team of reporters and we delved into where he's gotten his campaign contributions and how that's impacted his voting record and what he's done in the Senate, that could have been a whole book. Because what I discovered is Orrin Hatch has been sort of the protector of Utah's MLM-based businesses for the last 40 years and the supplements businesses. And he's been able to keep the FDA out of the supplements business where they're not calling supplements food. And so the regulation's been very lax on all of like the Zango and like the everything USANA.
Noni,
it used to be Noni juice.
That stuff's pretty good.
But like the essential oil companies are giant now, doTERRA and Young Living, and we've broken some stories about how they're adulterating their oils, but he protects them. He's like been, and he's got this giant war chest of dollars accumulated from these contributors, and it's basically the multi-billion-dollar supplements industry in Utah. And I thought, man, if we had reporters that could really track down all his campaign contributions and just present a pie chart of his like multi-million-dollar war chest to keep him in office and where those contributions came from, that would be very interesting. And
have you ever been like sued or like has anything ever backlashed on you? Because I mean, it sounds like you run some pretty controversial stories.
You're showing people the truth, and sometimes that's
but I mean,
dangerous.
Stuff could come back.
Well, speaking of Young Living Oils, I got on, they put me on a conference call with a team of attorneys to tell me to put down my story that we broke, that they had been adulterating their oils. And I just said, no. I mean, and they said, well, you better consider hiring an attorney because we're going to come after you. And I said, well, I'm just me. So I'm not going to hire an attorney. You can come after me. Mm-hmm. And they didn't ever contact me again.
They just tried to scare you off.
They just tried to scare me. And there had been videos. So I had a video leaked to me from a court deposition of a chemical essential oil scientist saying that doTERRA and Young Living were both adulterating their oils, and he had proof of those facts.
Like how were they?
They were adding. So there's a chemical called methyl silatate or silylate. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right.
The only reason I ask is because my mom loves that stuff, and it's like, gosh, I'd love to.
Oh man,
you're using garbage.
May or may not have a lot of those in our house.
It's like the peppermint oil and the birch oil. There's synthetic substitutes that are so close to the essential oils that you'll never be able to tell unless you are doing a very high-end analysis of the oil itself.
Oh, wow.
And so two of the oils that are easiest to cheat on, they had been consistently cheating on. This chemical scientist was hired by Young Living. He only worked there a few months because he didn't feel good about the fact that they were adulterating. And Dr. or D. Gary Young, he's not a doctor. He's the founder of Young Living. He has no problem telling everybody that he was cured from horrific accident that made him like a paraplegic by using essential oils, and that his wife was cured of infertility by using essential oils, and he'll say that frankincense oil.
Pretty extreme claims.
Yeah.
Dang.
And so he's just a big time con artist, and we're the only media outlet to come out and just call it as it is.
Yeah.
And because he is, and he tells his followers he can make outrageous claims, but just their position from a legal standpoint is they can't tell people to ingest oils. They can't tell people to use anything for the oils besides aromatherapy. But because there's the independent distributor model in the MLM, the distributors can make whatever claims they want.
We also asked on Twitter if anybody had any questions for you, and we got one reply. His name is Chaz Michaels. He wants to know what's the most horrifying and haunting Utah story he has heard or personally encountered? That's kind of a big question.
That's
Yeah, now that I'm reading that out loud, I'm like, gosh, what is the most
vague. You could go anywhere.
What's the
with
most
that.
horrifying or haunting Utah story he has heard or personally? Do you get into like any of those? Like, do you get into any of that? I don't know, like spirits and haunted places in Utah.
Yeah, well,
I would love to do a podcast episode on some of that stuff.
Oh, you could totally. Our paranormal issue that we ran in October, we revisited a guy named Pete Marshall, who owns Utah Book and Magazine on Main Street. And he's got the most haunted shop in Utah. He's got like 30 ghosts.
No kidding.
And he and his sister see them all the time. His brother died. I don't know if he died there, but his brother haunts them all the time. And he basically has seen like a full on captain walk into his shop at 3:00 in the morning with the stripes, with the hat on, the full on uniform, like this tall looking guy he just went right to the back of his shop where he's got pictures of this weird sort of like doorway that appears and disappears. And these ghosts come in and out of his shop and go to the back of the shop to this doorway. And there's some sort of like connection to the other side.
They never sit down and read. Enjoy.
He never calls
ambiance.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Do they give tours? Can like, let's go sleep there one night. I want to meet a ghost.
No.
I think that's amazing.
No.
Yeah.
What a fascinating story.
I don't believe in ghosts, but at the same time, they kind of scare me. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, I don't want to get scared here.
I want to see one.
Yeah, I've never seen a ghost, and I was sat there in his shop and I interviewed him, and I don't see.
Did you get any creepy feelings or?
No, but then I found out you have to kind of believe in the ghosts in order to see them. So maybe I just have to like learn how to believe in them. So.
Now, can anybody like myself, like say this issue that you did with him, can we go back and get back issues at all? Or is that all online, or how does that work?
Yeah. When we go to the farmers markets,
you put them all out there. People
come to our booth and we used to sell them. We're not selling them so much anymore. We'll just give them away. Yeah, usually and then we'll have the paranormal issues. And we have one writer named Danny Stewart who keeps writing paranormal stories. He's very much he gives a ghost tour in Provo, Utah.
I've heard of this guy. Yeah.
He's amazing. And he's got so many stories, like more than we can tell. And they kill it online. Like tons of people just visit our website to read his stories because he's got stories about all sorts of paranormal activities. And
what do you think it takes to be a good writer? Like what is that? Do you think it's like a skill, something someone's born with? I mean, what is it?
I think you have to, starting out, your main goal should be to be clear. Like the last thing you want to do is confuse a reader. You need to take a reader on a very clear pathway so that they can, so that the story flows well and that you have a beginning, middle, and end, like a very nice story arc. It's just starting out, be clear, and then after you've written enough stories, you start to find your own voice. Like you're not, and it's kind of annoying when people try to find their voice too soon by just being overly
themselves.
Yeah, like you don't want to embellish a story too much or use too many descriptive adjectives. I think nouns and verbs are actually better to go much more into detail than adjectives. Like you can use lots of flowery adjectives, and that's, some people would think that's a sign of a good writer, but I think the right noun usage and right verbs is stronger. And so that's my recommendation.
I agree. It's more important for a reader to understand your story than to sound smart.
Yeah.
That a lot of people will do that.
Yeah, I think so.
So you think it's a skill?
I think it's a skill. I do think it's a skill anybody could acquire. Because clear writing comes from clear thinking. To think clearly is basically gained by just reading more material and then talking about it to a friend. Mm-hmm. And then you gain the clarity of thought to express yourself better. And I think that I think anybody can acquire that skill. I don't think it's a special talent. I don't think I'm necessarily a gifted or talented.
But like writer. You went to school. Say somebody is too old to go to school. I guess you're never too old to go to school, I guess. But you just don't know where, you're like, gosh, I don't want to go to school, but I don't know where to start. I want to start writing or like journaling, or what would you recommend for them to do? Yeah,
I think that you have to shut down all distractions. I mean, that's for me, that's a total necessity. I can't have my phone on distracting me. I can't have like my dogs banging on the door outside. I got to have really quiet environment where I've either come back from a walk or I've just done something physical and I already kind of have the ideas in my head. And then I'm kind of more of a binge writer. I procrastinate a lot and then I just sort of spill it all out when it's clear in my head. If I try to write when it's not clear and I'm sort of fumbling through it, then I end up just throwing out the whole story and rewriting it anyway. And so I think that writing can, the writing process for me and for, I know a lot of writers is you get in a place where there's not, like I go up on the mountains with my dogs a lot and I just go up there and I think about story and I think about how I want to, what's going to be my leading, sentence and what's going to be the angle I'm taking. Like your hook and your angle are the two most essential components. And then once you figure out those two parts, you usually, if you can tell the story to a friend and the friend likes the story and you're able to tell it in a compelling way, then I'd say then write it down and it'll probably be good.
Do you ever have dreams to like write a book or anything?
Yeah, I think I really do think eventually I do want to write a book.
Any idea what you'd want it to be about? Maybe your autobiography?
I'm not sure. There's several topics that I'm interested in. I think that the kind of reoccurring theme of Utah stories and the people we write about, the makers and entrepreneurs and the people who kind of live outside of a box, we're kind of redefining what success means. Like we're rebranding the notion of success.
Yeah.
And I think success for a long time has been you have a job and you have a salary and then you're able to show the world what a great successful person you are.
You got the car, you got the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But all these material desires and this specific job, it puts so many people inside of a box. And then, in Salt Lake, we've got this problem with so many people suffering from depression despite living in such a beautiful place. And I've often asked the question of why is this? And I think it has something to do with a lot of people feeling like they really have to live inside this very rigid box. And I think if I were going to write a book, I'd like to write about how to escape that box. And just from all the hundreds of stories I've written about people, and like you guys have, like you definitely
collected on the audio.
So what does success mean to you?
I think for me, it has a lot more to do with lifestyle. Like, for example, I think I want to wake up in the morning, most mornings, and think about the stories I want to write. Mm-hmm. And I want to have the freedom to go up into the mountains with my dogs if I want to, or go down and talk to somebody who I've been really wanting to get a hold of to talk about a particular issue and get their take on, like my last big story was Operation Rio Grande. Like I really wanted to get a hold of one particular guy to get his take on the whole Rio Grande thing, and to wake up and be able to do that or go work in my garden. I think that success is much more about, and I think it was Bob Dylan who said it, to roll out of bed and be master of your own day.
Where do you see Utah Stories in 5 years? More of what you're doing now, or do you have like any long-term goals or nothing you could share or? Yeah,
I can share something we're doing right now. So, we started completely online. I kind of begrudgingly got into print. We want to go much more back into digital, and we're producing. We just hired on as our food and drink editor Ted Scheffler, who was with City Weekly for 23 years and the editor of Devour. He started a newsletter called Utah Bites, and it's really great. And we just launched it 3 weeks ago, and I encourage everybody to go subscribe to it because it's awesome. Ted's an amazing
writer. How do you subscribe to that? Through your website?
Yeah, just land on our website, and there's a sign up pop-up window right now that people can get on. And Ted's going to be launching a podcast, which I'll be talking to you more about.
Yeah.
And I think that I'd like to get back to doing more videos. I'd like my focus to be much more on stories than selling ads.
Yeah.
As much as I love my advertisers and all the businesses who advertise with us, I would just like to spend more time just on the content side
On
of
your
things.
passion part. So you will only accept local advertisers, right?
I've kind of shifted on that. If Walmart wanted to give me $500,000 to produce local stories, I would say,
Why not? Right?
I mean,
I'd
if
be
anyone
like,
said no.
But I'm still going to criticize Walmart.
Right. But hey, if they give you money.
Yeah, I basically my criticism of Walmart actually is not of the corporation itself, but of all the millions and millions and millions of dollars of handouts, corporate welfare they've received from local municipalities. I like to clarify that because I never begrudge people for shopping at Walmart, but Walmart is one of the biggest corporate welfare recipients in the United States, and that they should be getting so much free money, so many of our tax dollars to open up their shops to basically put out a business, our ma and pa stores. I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have a little bit of a bias towards local.
We do too. Weird.
Let's kind of shift gears a little bit and try to find out a little bit more about you as a person. But like when you're not writing, what are some of your other hobbies and interests? What are some other things that you like to spend your free time with?
I'm really a avid gardener. I've had a big backyard garden for like 15 years, ever since I've had my own house, and I really love growing tomatoes and like all sorts of varieties.
I love eating tomatoes. Can I come to your house?
Yeah, I like sharing tomatoes.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I switched to organic gardening just like 5 or 6 years ago. I was very much into fertilizers and using fertilizers effectively to grow like massive amounts of tomatoes. But then I realized that if you're using a lot of chemical fertilizers and you're dependent upon basically fossil fuels to grow your garden, you're in a lot weaker position in helping the environment and helping the overall geopolitical scene than if you're constantly using fertilizers on your garden. So I switched to all organic 5 years ago, and that's been a real challenge because it's definitely much more difficult to garden organically.
To produce the same amount, basically, or what's the biggest difference?
Yeah, yields are much slower.
Yeah.
And I got backyard chickens mostly for the fertilizer they produce for my garden, because the chickens' manure mixed with straw or wood chips is excellent fertilizer. And last year we had a great garden until our chickens like destroyed the garden. They just got out of the coop, and I didn't want to prevent them from like free ranging. And then I didn't seal it up properly fast enough, and then they just kind of obliterated the garden. But
oh man.
Yeah, that, and I like I said, going out on hikes with my dogs. I love backpacking. I climbed to the top of Mount St. Helens with some friends last summer. That was a ton of fun.
So you take advantage of the Utah wildlife and nature and mountains and
the scary outside.
I love it here. My wife would consider moving overseas or back to Europe. My wife's from Europe, and I'm just like, I love the mountains, and I just really love Utah.
What is the most memorable concert or sporting event that you've been to?
I was lucky enough to go to a Van Halen concert.
Really?
Up in the canyons. You remember the canyons?
Yeah. Was that Wolf Mountain? Was it the old Wolf Mountain, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they had concerts up there, and I saw Sting there, and I saw Van Halen. But that Van Halen concert was so awesome.
I imagine, yeah.
Oh, man, yeah.
Especially right there on the side of the hill outside. I saw Metallica, if it's at that same venue.
Oh, yeah. I saw Metallica in the Delta Center, and it wasn't that great in the Delta Center. Let's
kind of shift gears here. Talk Salt Lake City. I love to talk Salt Lake City. Obviously, Salt Lake City podcast, Utah Stories. This should get interesting. But if someone was visiting Salt Lake City area for, like, say, this upcoming weekend, what would you tell them to do or check out?
I would definitely tell them to go into the mountains, but not necessarily the busy ski resorts. Like, I wouldn't say spend all your time at Snowbird or Brighton or Snow Basin. I absolutely love Mill Creek Canyon and the top of Mill Creek. like I'd probably tell them go rent some snowshoes if you need to, and go to like the Mountain Air Trail at the top of Mill Creek Canyon, or do Desolation, which is where the Salt Lake Overlook Trail is in Mill Creek.
If you could change one or two things about Salt Lake City, what would you change?
I would definitely change the political leadership. It's like I'm not a liberal. I'm more of a libertarian. I'm really think that the Republicans and the Democrats especially in Utah, the Republicans in Utah don't seem to support common sense legislation regarding our liquor laws. Like if we really wanted to have the best possible tourism industry and the best possible tourism in Utah for visitors to come here, why not just totally do away with all of the laws regarding liquor and the privatization of selling of liquor at the DABC stores?
Because that would be anarchy. Be just drunk drivers all over the road, man, because look at California and look at all the other states that are normal.
Look at everywhere else.
Yeah. It's just hell. It's just crazy.
And I just think that there's this notion that you talk to anybody in the state legislature, they're doing everything they can possibly do to keep our air clean. And it's total bullshit. They're not doing it at all.
Yeah.
They could be doing so much more related to industry pollution. Mm-hmm. We did an investigation. We have 8 million pounds of chlorine gas going into our airshed because there's a big magnesium factory just right off the Great Salt Lake.
Oh, wow.
They're not doing anything about that. They think it's no problem at all. It's not causing any problems to our airshed. And then we have all this sulfur going into our airshed due to all the oil refineries, and then more like heavy metal refineries going on. And that could all be moved. It was all moved in Mexico City when they had people getting sick. And I just heard something on the radio. The state legislature and the Senate says our air is so much cleaner than it was 10 or 20 years ago.
Really?
Why is anybody complaining about it?
Who said this?
Interesting.
This was a state senator, and I can't remember what his name was.
Wow.
But it's like, okay, maybe they're dumping. So they did clean up the chlorine gas to an extent. They were dumping like 16 million pounds of chlorine gas. Now it's 8 million pounds of chlorine gas. But we're still supposed to be okay with the worst air quality in the United States on certain days. And so I think the political leadership, I would encourage people to vote for more people who are not stuck in a party. Like, try to find independents to vote for.
Yeah, people who are actually like vote for issues, not people.
Yeah,
that would be
and
a
I
great
think
change.
just find even if you're a staunch Republican, find somebody who is going to do something about the clean air problem, about our pollution.
For people that might be listening to this podcast right now and they've never visited Salt Lake City, what do you think the biggest misconception about our city is?
I would say the biggest misconception is that in downtown Salt Lake City that you would feel the effects of the Mormon church to a greater degree than you do. I think Salt Lake City is very liberal.
Yeah, I don't feel,
And we have one of the strongest LGBTQ communities here and one of the biggest gay pride parades. And you would never suspect that as an outsider, but and the downtown bar scene and food scene is pretty incredible now. I think it's gotten so much better compared to when I was in my 20s. And it's like you can go have a drink and go bar hopping now and ride a pedicab and go all over, downtown and have a great time. And I think most people can't imagine that would be possible here.
Well, and probably when you were probably close in age as I am, as I remember when you had to have a membership to get in individual places. And so there wasn't bar hopping.
Yeah.
And when that got lifted, that was one of the biggest things. It was like, oh, now we can go bar hopping. And
yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about favorite local eating spots. Where do you like to stuff your face? Where do you like to eat?
Well, when I just want to stuff my face, I really like Red Rock. That's probably my go-to spot in downtown. And I'd say after Red Rock, I love Red Iguana. I mean, gosh, I just think
their food there is
their
so
mole
good.
and all of their dishes are so awesome. But we also go quite a bit to Fiddler's Elbow, Salt Lake Pizza and Pasta, Ruth's Diner. I love to go up there. have their meatloaf for dinner or go have their brunch. And I love Feldman's Deli. Gosh, their pastrami sandwiches are amazing. Man, it's like the advertisers who've been in our book for a long time, like Beer Hive Pub. He's one of our longest time advertisers. I absolutely love that bar too.
You've been there, I think.
I've been there once, and I really enjoyed it.
Frosted
It's a great
top.
place.
They have that frosted.
Yeah, the big long beer luge.
Love it. Yeah. How can let's run down the list how people listening can find your publication, find more about you, links, Facebook, whatever.
We're most active on Instagram.
Really?
Which is kind of weird. I guess we should be more active on Twitter, but I never got into Twitter. But Instagram at Utah Stories, and then Facebook Utah Stories. YouTube, we've got a growing number of videos. Like we're trying to do about a video a month now, and I'm trying to increase that. Just did a big video on Operation Rio Grande and the impact it had on the homeless in Utah and why it happened.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother story I won't go into now, but we did a big video.
Go check it out on YouTube, right?
Yeah, check it out on YouTube. That video did not do as well as I hoped. We had another video that did incredibly well when Ben Shapiro came to speak at the campus of the University of Utah. I interviewed the protesters, and that video got something like 65,000 views and 900 comments. And I think most of the views and most of the comments were from people outside of Salt Lake who were very concerned about our political climate, what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And
anything else you want to ask him, Chrissy, while we have him?
Can you leave our listeners with a piece of advice?
I can. Related to our political climate and the media and the way we're fed our information, I really encourage people to use. So the way I understand this is the back part of our brain is our cerebral cortex, and that's the part of our brain we share with reptiles. It's basically see everything in black and white and in binary forms, good, evil, prey, predator. That's the part that's most activated when we're consuming the news, because if we're liberal, we tend to look at CNN. If we're conservative, we tend to watch Fox News. And we get filled with anger over what we're seeing. And I think the problem is we're not using the prefrontal cortex, which is the part that makes us the most human, which allows us to keep two differing ideas in our head at the same time. And so I encourage people to actually have a little cognitive dissonance, not necessarily believe what you are hearing.
Yeah, maybe think for yourself a little bit. Yeah,
and think like, okay, is this news outlet really giving me the truth, or do they perhaps have an agenda?
Mm-hmm.
And if you believe they do have an agenda, go find and search the information for yourself. Go find the truth on your own terms, because the more we are just sort of subjects to the mainstream media's influences, the more we are sort of programmed to be the consumers and be put into these boxes that we're so neatly and tightly put into. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a happier life when you're not put into a box like that.
I love it.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Thank you so much. It was great to finally get you on the show, Richard.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun. And I can't urge listeners enough. Go find, they're all over the magazines, restaurants, bars.
We pick one up every time we go out and see one.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They're, and every month and go visit you. And I always tell people, let's catch up down the road.
Yeah, totally.
And find out what you're up to. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
You bet. All right. Many thanks again to Richard Markosian for coming on this episode of the podcast. Make sure to reach out and connect with him. You can find all of the links to connect with him and Utah Stories. All of that is going to be at iamsaltlake.com/312 for episode 312. And while you're on the website, take a peek around. I mean, we have all the back episodes right there. We have an event calendar that you could check out and find out all of the cool happenings in Salt Lake City.
And if you know of some happenings that we missed putting on there, just contact us, because we really want to be as accurate as possible.
Send us a message. Send us a message on our email, hello@iamsaltlake.com, and let us know of any events coming up. But speaking of events, the Utah Podcast Summit is happening Friday, February 2nd from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Chrissy and I are actually going to be doing like workshops there. I'm going to be giving a talk, like a speech of my podcasting story. There's going to be tons of workshops. It's a really great price. I don't want to get into that. Just go to their website. We actually made a short link for that. iamsaltlake.com/podcast summit 2018 is where you can go and actually buy tickets right there online. That way you can go to the podcast summit and hang out with Chrissy and I.
I know it's going to be a great opportunity. I think
it's going to be a great networking day.
Yeah.
I mean, I've gone to podcast conferences, Chrissy, and just the networking
that's what
is
makes
going to be
worth
awesome.
It. Yeah.
Hey, that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. Many thanks again to Five Wives Vodka and Amanda K. Memories for sponsoring this episode. If you would like to sponsor an episode or two, please drop us an email at hello@iamsaltlake.com and we'll give you all those details. You guys have a great week. Get out and support local. We'll see you on the next episode.
And good night, Grammy.